Hello, and this is Laura Thompson, and I'm with Applying Christ Ministries, and we are here talking a little bit more about being prepared. And the question is, are you ready? I am pulling my information this evening from the Herbal Emergency Guide written by Rita Elkins. It was written quite a few years ago, and we're revisiting this today to get you prepared. So at the time when Rita wrote this book, she talked about some self-fulfilling prophecies. She also mentioned things like, predicting shortages. And at the time, since this was written around Y2K, the issue was any computer that had an internal clock can become inoperable. So shifting gears now, we know that we're past Y2K, but what types of things, if we don't have them, can cause other things to become inoperable? So in the event of electrical challenges or gas or flood, what types of things become inoperable? And when that happens, how prepared are you to deal, and for how long are you prepared? And that's kind of what the premise of our discussion is. So without any further ado, some of the disasters that people are pretty familiar with is like fire. And, with fire, you have to make a plan according to this book. Know how to get out in the case of a fire, not to panic, call the fire department, don't use elevators, close the door. These are just general information that can help you in the event of a fire, and different prevention and safety measures that can get you to be safe. Signal for help, if you're trapped, signal with a flashlight or a light colored sheet, things of that nature. If you see smoke in your fire escape, choose another way out. And so as you're building your disaster plan for your home or business, make sure you have multiple or alternate routes to get out. And of course, a meeting place for family. Make sure you have a plan for pets and, a way for pets to get out, etc. And that's just in the case of fire. But what happens in the event of a flood? Now, some people don't have flood insurance policies because they're not in a flood zone. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't have a flood policy. If you want to have a flood policy, you can contact your agent and get a flood policy. No one can stop you from paying extra to get a flood policy for your home. So watch the flood warnings. Sometimes towards the end of the year, we have things called hurricane season. So with hurricane season, there's a lot of generation of water in certain places, and waters can produce floods. Another thing that can produce floods is earthquakes, and we'll talk about earthquakes a little bit later. But with floods, you got to watch for the warnings. Flash floods can occur in just a few minutes. Know your area, and more importantly, know your area's flood risk. If you don't know, call your local Red Cross chapter, or if you live in a flood zone, get flood insurance like I mentioned. If it's been raining hard outside, and especially if you're in a place like in the South where there's a lot of trees, if it's been raining for a long period of time, you really need to look at your trees, because if the ground is too soft, those trees can come down at any point in time and cause, the rain can cause the trees to become rotten. So you have to, just because it's raining and it stopped doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a disaster that's impending. So you have to just be mindful of these things. Just because you see water, you may think it's not affecting you. Well, it could be affecting other things that can affect you. So make arrangements to move your family to a safe place. If you don't have anywhere to go, then go to the Red Cross. But of course, when you deal with the shelters, make sure you have your 72-hour pack and your house is taken care of so that you're all set. Of course, your important papers like your will, your bills, things backed up on your computer, in the cloud, in a place where you can have access to them maybe later. Get your family to higher ground immediately. When the flood is over, don't return home until the authorities tell you to do so. Okay, so that's a flood. But now let's shift gears and let's talk about nuclear attack and radiation exposure. Now, there have been more and more discussions about nuclear activity in different parts of the world. And so how does one prepare for nuclear and radiation exposure. So you definitely need to have your 72-hour emergency kit. You'll need to have your radio available so that you'll know what information you need to hear. With large amounts of radiation, according to the book, page 83, if it's absorbed in the body, sickness could occur and even death. So few people get sick who have been exposed to 100 rotogens or less. Exposure to more than 300 rotogens over a period of time, over a few days, will cause sickness in the form of nausea, and in some cases could be fatal. So radiation sickness is not contagious. Fallout radiation cannot make anything radioactive, but food and water that have been exposed to the radiation, they are contaminated only to the extent that they contain fallout particles on them. Okay? Exposed food that can have particles on it can be made safe by washing or brushing or peeling. So there's a way to get around some of this. Fallout particles on bodies should be washed off. Fallout particles can be removed from water supply by sedimentation or filtering. So water filtering systems, again, are a good way to distill the water and keep yourself safe. When there is radiation, one of the first things you need to do is make sure you turn off your gas, your water, and your power. Disconnect all electrical devices. Secure your cars in the garage, and remember that batteries can be used. Board or plywood windows if there is time. So put boards or plywood on windows. We didn't necessarily talk about having board and plywood available, but you might want to consider having some of that on hand somewhere. Take all movable containers of water to the shelter area. So that means if you haven't done so already, you need a shelter area where you can kind of secure your food and your water. Gather heavy tools together if there's time and fill window wells with dirt or sandbags and put dirt around the exposed basement portions. Again, this is if you have a basement in the event of radiation exposure. There are definitely rules for airborne radiation and recognition of fallout particles. These are things that you might want to research on your own. Basement shelters. If you have a shelter in your basement, that's a great thing. Concrete blocks, bricks, and sandbags. You want to take doors off of their hinges and dressers and chests and fill the drawers after they've been placed in a position with trunks and boxes and cartons, and fill with sand, tables, bookcases, large appliances such as washers. And there is a ton of things that this book talks about that you need to do in the event of having a shelter in a basement and what needs to be taken care of. And this is for exposure to radiation. If there's a nuclear situation, I would encourage you to go ahead and look on YouTube now as a part of your preparation for radiation exposure and get yourself prepared. More importantly, get yourself out if possible. Okay, now we're shifting to tornadoes. Tornadoes is probably something more common because you hear about them. They may not be in your part of town, but and if they are, they're familiar to you. So a tornado watch means that a tornado is possible in your area, or tornado warning means that a tornado has been sighted and may be headed for your area. Okay? And so if you hear a tornado warning, go to safety immediately. When a tornado watch is issued, listen to the local radio and TV stations for further updates. When a warning is issued, if you are inside, go to a safe place that you pick to protect yourself from glass and flying objects. So a lot of times this place is going to be in the center of the house, maybe under some stairs, sometimes in the bathtub might be a good place if you don't have windows that are near the bathtub. Sometimes there's a closet that might work. So bottom line, you have to choose your safety place. If you're in your car in a mobile home, get out immediately and head for a safety. When the tornado approaches, take immediate action. Seek inside shelter. Stay away from windows. Keep your resistor radio tuned for the latest information. If you're at home, they say the basement is best. Go under a heavy table or workbench. If you have no basement, stay under heavy furniture in the center part of the house. It says keep your windows open, but stay away from them, which is really interesting. And that was back in Y2K. We probably need to look at that and revisit why keep your windows open, but stay away from them. If it's a mobile home, get out of the mobile home and find shelter in a sturdy building. If it's an office building, go into the interior hallway on the lower floor, preferably in the basement. If you're in a factory, have a plan to move workers out of the areas with wide, unsupported roofs and move to areas where there are good walls, such as a hallway or a restroom. In school, you need to move people to the interior hallway on the lowest floor. Avoid the gymnasium or other areas with wide, unsupported roofs. And that means, so if you're in a church and this church was a gymnasium, you need to get out of that building and go to a building that has a more supported roof. If you're in the open country, lie flat in a ditch or a ravine. And in this book it says, do not call the weather service except to report tornado. As a part of your home tornado plan, this is on page 85 of the book, pick a place where family members could meet if a tornado is heading in your direction. If you're in a high-rise building, you might not have enough time to go to the lowest floor, so pick a hallway in the center of the building. Make sure you have your 72-hour kit available and ready. And if you live in an area where there is a high tornado risk, conduct periodic tornado drills so that everybody knows what to do when a tornado is about to hit. All right, so we talked about fires, floods, radiation, tornado. Now we're going to get into something that may not be as common, but can be common. Electrical storms. So, how do you know electrical storm is present? Well, here's one way to know. Keep your eyes on the sky. Look for darkening skies, flushes of light, or increasing wind, and listen for the sound of thunder. If you can hear thunder, you are close enough to the storm to be struck by lightning, so go to shelter immediately. Listen to the NOAA Weather Channel, commercial radio, or television for the latest weather forecast. When a storm approaches, find shelter in a building or a car and keep your car windows closed to avoid convertibles. In an electrical storm, telephone lines and metal pipes can conduct electricity. This is where you need to unplug appliances. Avoid using the telephone or any electrical appliance. Avoid taking a bath or a shower or running water for any purpose during an electrical storm because you don't want to have anything electrocute. Turn off the air conditioner. Power surges from lightning can overload the compressor and causing a costly repair job. Draw the blinds and the shades over the windows. If the windows break due to the objects blown by the windows, the shades will prevent the glass from coming in on you. If you're in the woods, take shelter under the shortest tree. If you are boating or swimming, get to land and find shelter immediately. Protect yourself outside. Go to a low-lying place, an open place away from trees or poles or metal objects. Make sure the place that you pick is not subject to flooding. Be a very small target. Squat low to the ground. Place your hands on your knees with your head between them, and make sure you're the smallest target possible. Don't lie on the ground, and this will make your target larger. So after the storm passes, stay away from storm damaged areas. Listen to the radio for more information. And if someone is struck by lightning, people that are struck by lightning don't carry an electrical charge. and they can be handled safely. But you do need to call for help, of course. Call for 911. Sometimes these things happen and you're in shock. Okay, well, you know, you got to think in advance. When something happens, call 911. The injured person that has received a shock could be burned. And you might want to try to see how you might be able to help them. Give first aid first. And if they stop breathing, make sure you are with somebody that is trained to facilitate CPR if you haven't done the training. Okay. Now, a winter storm is pretty common. There was a winter storm recently in the Northeast and also out Midwest. They have winter storms all the time. Understand the difference between a watch and a warning. A warning means that the storm is heading in your direction. A blizzard warning means strong winds, blind, wind-driven snow. And so, of course, you're going to need to dress for the season. Make sure you have layers. Of course, make sure you have your 72-hour kit. Your 3-month kits for food if you can't get out. Some people even tell you to have snowshoes. Snowshoes can look like something that enables to have your feet stay on top of the snow, a little bit more balanced. I've even seen people use things like tennis rackets and tying their feet to tennis rackets, and using that to kind of position themselves on top of the snow so that they don't fall in. Just consider. I'm not going to tell you to use tennis rackets. If you've seen an example of this on YouTube or Google, then you can do that. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying I've seen, you know, where people have done that. If you're stuck during a winter storm and you're driving, stay in the car and don't try to walk to safety. And that's, of course, if you have your emergency kit on you. If you don't have your emergency kit on you, and you know we've had some storms in certain places where people have been stuck in their car for hours indefinitely, and they've run out of gas. And so again, this is the time where, you know, if you know a storm is imminent, you might want to make sure your car is stocked, and you have to leave. Make sure your car is stocked with the things you need. Get that extra gasoline. Get those blankets. The dried fruit, the gallon of water. Those are the things that you need to have on hand, just to keep you safe. The emergency numbers. Make sure your battery is charged, and if you need to use phone and things of that nature, you can use the charger in your car, just to keep yourself, you know, prepared in the event of winter storm. Okay. Now we're going to go into earthquakes, and earthquakes is the last subject. Now, I talked about flooding before, and I mentioned that sometimes an earthquake can cause flooding. Well, if you think of tsunamis happen as a result of an earthquake that occurred in the ocean. And sometimes earthquakes increase fault lines on ground as well. So with fault lines opening up, meaning the cracks in the ground opening up, water can come from those cracks and cause flooding. And so earthquakes, you know, we kind of need to watch fault lines within our area, and look at, you know, the propensity of the fault line and water, and just kind of balance those things out. So with an earthquake, when the shaking starts, you have to stay calm, drop, cover, and hold on. So that means drop to the ground, make sure you are covered, maybe something that's sturdy that's over you, and hold on. Now the next thing is to stay away from windows. If you're in a high-rise building, expect the fire alarms and sprinklers to go off. If you're in bed, hold on and stay there. Protect your bed with a pillow. If you're outdoors, find a clear spot away from buildings and trees and power lines. Drop to the ground. If you're in a car, slow down and drive to a clear place, like described above, and stay in the car until the shaking stops. After the shaking stops, check yourself for injuries. And with any of these disasters, check yourself for injuries. Protect yourself from further damage and further danger. by, make sure you're wearing protective clothing. So that means long sleeve pants, long sleeve shirts, sturdy shoes, that kind of thing. Make sure if you have gloves available, because you don't know what you might be touching. Have protective clothing on. Look for and extinguish any small fires that have occurred after the earthquake. Eliminate the fire hazards. Turn off the gas if you smell any gas. Listen to the radio for instructions, and expect aftershocks. And each time you feel one, drop, cover, and hold on. With fires, you drop, cover, and roll. But in this case, for earthquakes, you drop, cover, and hold on. You're going to inspect the home for damage. Check for gas, water, and sewage breaks. Turn off any appropriate utilities that might be turned on. Make sure that you get everyone out of the house and into the safe place that you guys discussed as you're building your disaster plan. Use the telephone only to report life-threatening emergency, and wear shoes. Clean up any dangerous spills, and listen for instructions and public safety agencies. Now, before the earthquake occurs, and sometimes you might know that something's going to happen, always have a pair of shoes if you're at home for any of these disasters. Make sure that you have a pair of shoes by your bed that you can actually put on and wear, not just your slippers. Make sure you have shoes that you can put on if you have to go. Check your home for hazards. Hold family earthquake drills if you need to, and teach responsibility to your family members, like turning off utilities and things of that nature. Gather supplies and medicines in your 72-hour survival kit for water, clothing, and food. Choose a safe place in every room, whether it's under a sturdy table or desk or something of that nature. And eliminate hazards. So if you have things that are just out, make sure you kind of get things, in order. And that's what this preparedness journal really is about. Just making sure that you have things in order. So whether there's a power outage or a gas leak or electrical storm or an earthquake, or any type of natural disaster or an emergency, you are prepared. And I think that's the goal, and that's the desire of Applying Christ Ministries. They want you to be prepared. And it behooves you to be a good steward and just be prepared. It's my joy and my pleasure to talk to you today about preparedness, and you don't have to wait until Preparedness Month, which is known as September. You can take the time to get prepared today, and have plans available so that you will be where you need to be. And with all that we're saying, God bless you, and I hope this was very helpful to you. And be safe, be sure, and be secure, and more importantly, be prepared. Again, this is Laura Thompson, and I'm here with Applying Christ Ministries, and we hope you have a good rest of the year.